2022 has been a roller coaster year for AEW to say the least. But that doesn't mean that the company ever stopped producing good professional wrestling. The in-ring quality is one thing that AEW never lost. And today, I'm listing my 10 favorite matches from the promotion this year. This was a tough list to put together as AEW has put on some incredible matches throughout the year. So just remember that just because your favorite isn't on this list, doesn't mean it wasn't good. My rankings are based on the lasting impact these matches had on me more than anything. So if you guys can, let me know what your top 10 is in the comments. At number 10, I have the Acclaimed vs Swerve in Our Glory for the tag team titles at All Out, the sleeper hit that no one expected. All Out this year was a strange pay-per-view, and I'm not even talking about all the post-show drama either. I still can't even tell you how I feel about this show. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. I hated what happened after the show, but I didn't hate the show itself. I guess the best way to describe this show is that it was just kind of there. It had its highs, but not nearly enough to make it your typical memorable AEW pay-per-view. However, the tag title match saw a rabid Chicago audience rally behind AEW homegrown tag team, the Acclaimed. This match was elevated to a top 10 spot because of the atmosphere. But had the Acclaimed won this, it would have been elevated to a higher spot. The Acclaimed did eventually get their big moment in a match that wasn't as good, but still good nonetheless. But the All Out match will always be remembered as the night the Acclaimed should have won, and for that, I have it at number 10. Up next at number 9, I have the AEW Women's Championship between Jamie Hayter and Toni Storm at Full Gear. This was easily AEW's best women's match of the year in my opinion. The AEW women's division has always been a point of discussion since day one, but I'd honestly say that the division has seen improvement in the second half of 2022. This was the third women's match of the pay-per-view, and it was a blow-away bout between two hard hitters. After coming up short at the previous pay-per-view, the crowd was dying for Hayter to finally become a world champion. Meanwhile, Toni Storm was on a very dominant run as the interim women's champion. The drama with Britt and Rebel coming out for some really well executed near falls is what made everyone jump out of their seats. And of course, Jamie Hayter getting the win was the result we were all waiting for. It also helped that both Toni Storm's and Jamie Hayter's reigns were made official the following Wednesday on Dynamite. An excellent match which may arguably be the best AEW women's match of all time that elevated an already great pay-per-view and unlike the previous match, had the right result. Perhaps a surprise inclusion at number 8, I have Cody Rhodes vs Sami Guevara in a ladder match to crown the undisputed TNT champion. Cody's one and only match in AEW before leaving for WWE was a great end to his time with the promotion. It was an interesting match because both men had already lost the crowd despite being babyfaces. But once the bell rang, all of that went out the window as we saw these two men put on a classic ladder match and probably my favorite ladder match of the modern era. What we all remember this match for is Sami Guevara's picture-perfect cutter to Cody off the ladder. That's a moment that should be played endlessly in AEW highlight reels, though since Cody's departure, the spot is hardly mentioned. Cody put Sami over on his way out, and even made sure he and Ty became the new Cody and Brandy. In all seriousness, this was a fantastic match between two of AEW's most polarizing characters, and as the year has gone by, no one really talks about this match as one of the best in AEW this year, but it definitely makes my list. At number 7 on my list is the Young Bucks vs Lucha Bros, which took place on a June episode of Rampage. As far as my taste in wrestling goes, sometimes I need long-term storytelling with great payoff, and sometimes I just need flippy shit. Young Bucks and Lucha Bros obviously have a long history in AEW though, they even topped my list of my favorite AEW matches last year. Anyway, this was a fast-paced athletic showing between two of my favorite teams in AEW, while also being another fantastic match in this day one AEW rivalry. There's not much else to say about this match. It's one of those matches that doesn't require a story to be enjoyable, but if you do know the story, then it just adds stakes to the match. These two tag teams are each other's best opponents, and anytime they share a ring together, I stop what I'm doing to watch. And for that reason, they made my list. Closing out the first half of my list at number 6 is the Elite vs Hangman and the Dark Order for the Trios titles at All Out. All Out 2022 makes another appearance on this list, and yet I still can't say I love the pay-per-view, which is strange. But with that being said, this match reminded me of why AEW is elite and why the elite is AEW. This match involved the 4 men who took us on a journey for those first 2 years of AEW's existence. Hangman, Omega, and the Young Bucks transported me back to how I felt when I was watching their all-time classic tag team match at Revolution 2020. Except this time, Hangman had help from his friends, the Dark Order. Everyone went into this match knowing that the Elite would be crowned the first ever Trios champions. But during the match itself, they made us believe that Hangman and the Dark Order could pull off the upset. The fact that this was the first time that Hangman and Omega crossed paths since their iconic match at Full Gear the year prior also added to the epicness. It was another unfortunate chapter in Hangman's arc as he once again fell short while his former friends the Elite got to celebrate. As always, the Elite's matches are best enjoyed if you're familiar with their history. Who knows what follow-up we would have seen had the post-show disaster not taken place, but at least we have this match itself to fondly look back on. We start the second half of my list with Anarchy in the Arena at number 5. This was a beautiful train wreck that you just couldn't look away from. The Jericho Appreciation Society took on the Blackpool Combat Club with the help of Eddie Kingston and Santana and Ortiz in this Quentin Tarantino style epic. I'd need 30 minutes to truly break down this match because there was simply so much that happened here. This match was the equivalent to Stadium Stampede, except now fans were back, so it added to the epicness of the all-out violence. Perhaps the star of the show though was Eddie Kingston, as the sight of him stumbling out from the back completely covered in blood while carrying a tank of gasoline will forever be ingrained in my mind. I also want to add that this was the first pay-per-view I watched with my girlfriend, and her reactions to this chaotic match just added to the experience. Hilarious and epic all around. Crazy to think that we went from the highs of this and Blood and Guts to now being tired of this feud. Anyway, I digress. Killer match. AEW had such a crazy year that anything within the top 5 of my list can easily be someone's favorite match of the year. Which brings us to number 4 on my list. FTR vs the Young Bucks 2 for the Ring of Honor and AAA tag team titles. The first match these two teams had in 2020 was the biggest tribute to tag team wrestling that you'll ever see. Bucks came out victorious in that one, but for the highly anticipated rematch, it was FTR coming in as the heavy favorites as they looked to defend their 2 titles. The contrast in styles and philosophies between these two teams will always fascinate me. Throughout the match, both teams really stuck to their individual style. Maybe it works in their favor as they're 2 for 2 as far as excellent matches go. With the roles of heel and face reversed this time around, FTR defeated the Bucks to a thunderous ovation. Both teams now sit tied with 1 win apiece, which leaves fans hopeful that there will be a third match between the two to finally determine who the best tag team in the world really is. We're now in the top 3 of my list, and I'll just say that any of the following 3 matches are interchangeable for me. It was hard to settle on an order, but just know that these top 3 are some of my favorite AEW matches, not just for this year, but ever. Number 3 is the dog collar match between CM Punk and MJF at Revolution. What more can I add to this match that I haven't already? I've talked about it twice in my MJF and Punk retrospectives, and I can talk about it for another hour. This was the culmination of one of AEW's best feuds to date, and certainly their best feud of 2022. Punk faced the devil he created in a violent, emotional bout that saw him turn back the years in order to stand a chance. His entrance to his Ring of Honor theme is still one of my favorite moments of the year and will go down as one of my favorite wrestling moments ever. Despite losing, MJF proved he's on the level of an icon like CM Punk throughout the entire feud. When I say I want stories in wrestling, this is what I mean. This match could have easily been number 1 if it weren't for a silent crowd during the initial parts of the match, but even then, it's still a masterpiece. We never got to see the true payoff to this feud, but if this is truly it for Punk in AEW, then I'm glad we at least got this. Number 2 is a match I was there for live, so my opinion on it might be skewed compared to everybody else's, but you guys let me know. Orange Cassidy vs Will Osprey for the IWGP United States title at Forbidden Door. Let's face it, AEW and New Japan's first joint event was cursed. News of a new injury every week became the norm at the time, but I still had to attend this event for the historic nature alone. I made a whole 10-minute video on why I love this match if you want to check it out. Many people were disappointed when Orange Cassidy was revealed to be Osprey's opponent for such a huge and historic event, but once again, OC proved his doubters wrong by having the best match on the show, in my opinion of course. The best way I can describe this match is stupid fun, which is what wrestling should be in my opinion. Seeing Osprey grow into this match as he starts to take Orange Cassidy more seriously little by little was a masterclass in pacing. Everyone in the United Center that night was hooked on the drug that is Orange Cassidy. But in the end, Will Ospreay got the win. It didn't even matter though, because we all knew we had just seen a classic professional wrestling match between one of the best characters in wrestling and one of the best in-ring performers in wrestling. And for that, I have Will Ospreay versus Orange Cassidy at number 2. And here it is, my AEW match of the year. Number 1 on my list, Bryan Danielson versus Hangman Page for the AEW World title on the first Dynamite of the year. This was the second match between these two after their first match ended in an epic 60-minute time limit draw. Is it controversial to say I enjoyed their second match more though? Don't get me wrong, their first match was phenomenal, but after 30 minutes, you kinda knew it was going to a draw. I enjoyed this match more simply because you knew someone had to win, and it made it all the more exciting. Hangman Page handing Danielson his first loss in AEW was the perfect way to further cement him as your top champion. Also, I just love a classic world title match on free TV. It just reminds me of how cool wrestling was when I was a kid. This started AEW's year off with so much promise, and the fact that this match happened during the first week of the year and it still sits in my mind as the best, despite seeing so many fantastic matches throughout the year, confirms that this is my number 1 pick. Of course though, there were plenty of matches to choose from, and I look forward to reading everyone's lists. So here's hoping that AEW gives us plenty of matches to choose from once more next year.